Hey everyone, welcome back to the Claims Theory podcast, where we break down the complexities of revenue cycle management and explore the future of healthcare operations. Today's episode is special because I have a guest who has been around revenue cycle her whole life, whether she wanted to be or not. My daughter, Lexi Miller. Lexi, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm more excited to have you here. Lexi is a senior at Purdue University, majoring in business and marketing, and she'll be graduating in May. Where has the time gone? While she hasn't worked in revenue cycle directly, she's grown up hearing about it at the dinner table and watching the industry evolve from the outside. So I wanted to bring her on today because she represents the next generation of workers, those who have grown up with technology and have new expectations for careers. I'm excited to hear her perspective on work, the future of industries like revenue cycle, and what it would take to attract her peers to this space. So let's just get into it. So Lexi, first, why don't you tell us a little bit about what drew you to business and marketing and what excites you about that field?
Yeah, I just really always been interested in how brands connect with people, whether that's through advertising, social media, the packaging of the product. I just really loved the idea of creating something that resonated with an audience. So not only that, but I enjoy the strategic side of marketing, finding out, what makes people tick, presenting a product or a service in a way that really grabs their attention. And plus, marketing offers so many career paths. You've got brand management, sales, digital marketing. So I really just love always knowing that there's room for me to grow and explore.
I think only because I know you so well, it also for you allows you to express your creativity. So both marketing and business really have a place for creative minds. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons. Growing up, revenue cycle was probably in the background of your life more than you wanted, I'm sure. Did any of it ever influence your career path, or did it just seem like, mom's thing?
Honestly, when I was younger, this was definitely a mom's thing. I really did not fully understand, what it was. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, how much this has influenced me. Watching you practically run a company 24/7, 7 days a week, really showed me what hard work and dedication looked like. And to be honest, I never would have considered a career in business if it weren't for seeing your passion and drive. It has definitely shaped my work ethic and inspired my own career goals.
That's a great answer. So let's talk about work ethic and career goals, but specifically your generation has a very different view on work compared to mine. At least I think. What do you think are the biggest priorities for Gen Z when choosing a career?
Yeah. Honestly, the whole package. So compensation, benefits, location, the flexibility of your offer and your job duties. Um, But so many of us will be graduating after spending 4 years for the most part, pretty broke. In addition, graduating with some student loans. So compensation is obviously a huge factor in whatever offers we're getting. But not only that, if they are asking us to relocate, kind of making sure that we are being compensated for all of the things that involve relocating to a different city. But also flexibility is huge. We want the freedom to balance work with our personal lives. And beyond that, we're also looking for companies that are embracing technology and creativity. We want meaningful work, something that feels like it has a purpose. And I would also say the strong mentorship program that's helping us grow professionally is equally as important. Career growth is obviously very important, and we want to know that there is a clear path forward.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point about your peers getting ready to graduate and getting job offers, looking at companies, but the companies that you do have to relocate for. Um, an understanding there from employers that college grads, like you said, are largely broke, oftentimes in sometimes a substantial amount of student loan debt and potentially other debt to get through school and pay for your education. So if relocation is a part of that career, it is difficult to come up with the funds to be able to do it. So just, it sounds like what you're saying is you hope that organizations that are trying to attract your peer group with a requirement of relocation are just keeping that. They're just considering, what goes into someone that might not have the means to relocate. Oftentimes, when organizations are putting together that comp package for a new grad, I think the first thing that they're thinking about is there's no experience here, so we're going to start you at the low end. Not to say that's not accurate, just keeping in mind, yes, the economy, but certainly the cost of living and the cost of relocating, if that's a requirement. So Lexi, there's a perception that Gen Z isn't interested in traditional corporate structures or 9 to 5 jobs. Do you think that's true?
I think there's some truth to that, definitely. I think it's more about how work is structured. It's not so much about avoiding the 9 to 5. It's more so about focusing on the quality of our work and the impact that we're making. It really shouldn't matter what hours you're working, clocking in, clocking out, as long as you're meeting deadlines and contributing to your organization in a meaningful way.
While there are, for most organizations, standard operating hours, I think what you're saying is your generation has no issue with operating hours, whatever they may be, but more of the focus on what can be done inside that time, how efficient can you be with that time, which kind of plays into some technology questions that we're going to get into, and how that plays a role into the jobs that your generation is seeking. But really just making sure you get it done with good quality, but also with efficient tools, so to maximize the output. So from your perspective, what are some of the biggest misconceptions older generations have about your generation in the workplace?
Easily, I would say that we don't have a strong work ethic. That's just not true at all. We are willing to work hard, but we want to do it in a way that makes sense for us. Uh, we, all grew up with technology. We have a mindset where if there is an obstacle, we want to find the most efficient, quickest solution to that issue. And then I'd also say we approach communication pretty differently than older generations. We are all used to instant messaging and quick responses, but oftentimes that can be seen as informal. I just really think that since we grew up with technology, we expect companies to use tools that make work more efficient.
You're right. Your generation really is used to communicating through technology.
Yeah.
Snapchat and Instagram and what are they, DMs? Well, and text
Not
messaging and
how many managers I'm DMing over here.
well, more to the point of you're just used to communicating using tools. So this might be an uncomfortable question, but does it make your generation uncomfortable to have actual conversations face to face?
Um, I hate to admit this, but I think that would depend on who you're speaking to. For
That's
the
fair.
most part, there's a good majority of us who are very comfortable and honestly still craving
Yeah.
face-to-face interactions, especially because of COVID. But yes, there are probably a few of us in the Gen Z generation that are quite uncomfortable with face-to-face interactions for sure.
Yeah. Um, I mean, obviously I was kidding. You are all more than capable of it. And to your point, I think some embrace it and love that social interaction. And I also think at the same time, it's natural for you to use tools to communicate. You're comfortable there. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Let's talk about first impressions of revenue cycle management. If we had a group of your peers over for dinner, how would you describe revenue cycle management to them?
Okay. At a high level, right? Okay. It's really about making sure healthcare providers get paid correctly for their services. So something I think that has really helped me gain somewhat have a better understanding of this industry is having parents on both sides of this industry. So my father's a surgeon on the clinical side, and obviously you and my mother are more on the business administrative side.
Yeah.
So maybe a quick example, my dad, right, who's a surgeon, someone needs to make sure that his health system is getting paid for the surgeries that he's performing, and someone needs to make sure that he's getting paid appropriately. Revenue cycle management is really all about bringing all of these pieces together so that providers and their organizations are getting paid accurately and on time. I hope that's a close enough description here.
It's right on. I mean, that in a nutshell is what revenue cycle management is. You said it very well. Providers that are caring for patients, and whether it's surgery or an office visit or whatever it is in some kind of clinic setting or otherwise, it is the administrative function to make sure that those providers are getting paid and paid correctly for the services so that they can continue offering those services, and that those health systems or organizations can continue hiring more providers and being able to provide even more care to patients. So anyway, yes, you're right. At a high level, that's what it is. If I told your classmates at Purdue that revenue cycle is a great career path, what do you think their reaction would be?
Honestly, their first reaction would probably be, what is revenue cycle management? I don't think that that's a term we hear very often, honestly, at all. So I do think that there is a challenge in getting that initial awareness out there and helping people understand what it is and why it matters.
What you're saying is maybe the advice is, awareness, and maybe it's even before, going to college. Maybe it's somehow, revenue cycle management needs to be discussed in high schools as a potential career path, because there's all levels, there's all different kinds of ways that you can enter this field. And then just, at universities, getting out in front and discussing it, because, uh, I'm just thinking that, um, depending on the major that you're in, you may or may not touch on anything to do with healthcare. So maybe those that are, that have some kind of healthcare concentration, healthcare administration, they're going after an RHIA or an RHIT. They're probably covering some form of revenue cycle management education, but to your point, business and marketing, maybe not. And so, is there a way to incorporate some kind of healthcare, business, general education so that people understand? So, Lexi, let's talk on that note about how we can make revenue cycle attractive to the next generation, your generation. What do we need to do to evolve, to attract young professionals? What are the key things that would make an industry like this more appealing?
I think these questions are fairly similar as well my responses, but I really do think it all starts with exposure. Companies should be speaking to high schools and universities to explain what revenue cycle is and the different career paths within that industry. I think a lot of people don't realize that you still can pursue your major, whether that's marketing, accounting, data science, and apply it to revenue cycle management. Now, of course, you still need your, medical coders and billers, but it's really about showing the full range of opportunities that exist. Right now, I don't think that there are a lot of these companies coming to universities, creating these connections. So they are missing a chance to discuss these opportunities with students who are exploring career options.
You're right. If you're an accounting major or an HR major or, a marketing and business major, there are still ways to specialize in those areas inside of revenue cycle management. A lot of healthcare organizations and, RCM companies, they still need accountants. They still need people in their marketing department. They still need business development, data analytics. So exposure to not only what RCM is, but making sure that it's clear that you can still have other specialization in your degrees and apply that into the space. I like that, Lexi. So revenue cycle is heavily tied to data, AI, and automation now. Does that make it more interesting to younger professionals, or does it still feel like, a back office function?
Uh, to a degree, I think it also heavily depends on the person. It comes down to what they're majoring in and what they're passionate about. For example, if you're studying data analytics, hearing that you could work with data every day and use it to solve problems could make revenue cycle really appealing. The key is showing us how we can apply our skills in a meaningful way.
Final thoughts and advice for employers, which we kind of talked about that, and maybe before, the advice, if right now, based off everything we just discussed, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to choose between a marketing job and a revenue cycle job, which would you pick?
RCM. No, I'm kidding. I felt your trap. I don't know if I would necessarily look at it that way, marketing versus revenue cycle. I think for me, it's more about the company itself. So, is it a good culture fit? Are there career growth opportunities? Is someone going to help me, cultivate my creativity, mentor me? I think what's most important for me is that I want to feel proud when I talk about my job with my friends or my family. I really want to be able to say that I enjoy what I'm doing and that I feel like I'm making a difference. So
Yeah.
those are more the things I think I would factor into that decision.
That's a good answer, and it was still kind of a trick question because I know we just talked about how marketing can exist inside of a revenue cycle management organization or job, but I think that's important. It's not so much for you and probably, your generation. It's not so much about maybe the industry, but it's about the company, the
Yes.
culture. Is there a good are there good growth opportunities? And yeah, when you're home for the holidays, are you proud of where you work? Are you excited to tell your friends and family about what you're doing all day? And so I think on that note, advice for employers just listening to this that might be thinking, how can we attract this generation? I think it's everything that we've talked about in this podcast so far. It's creating an environment that is embracing technology, clear opportunities for growth laid out, fair compensation, taking into consideration costs on education, potential relocation, and again, a good mentor that can help create those opportunities and continue giving meaningful work so that you can continue gaining experience and beef up your resume, and feel like you're really contributing to the organizations that your generation is out there looking at. Closing remarks here. I really want to thank you for being on this podcast today, Lexi. I've loved hearing your perspective. And I think this conversation is going to be very valuable for companies looking to attract the next generation in this space. It certainly is for me, by the way. I know just personally working with you. And so for 2 seconds and then we're gonna say goodbye. You've been a tremendous asset to claims theory. I don't know if anyone knows this, but for our listeners, Lexi is the marketing, strategist. A lot of what you see is Lexi Miller. She is applying everything, maybe not everything, but a lot of what she's learned at Purdue, and branding and to this startup. So she gets it, and I'm very grateful for that. I get to tap into that young mind. So my advice is, don't be afraid to discuss these things with this generation. They've got great perspective and great ideas. frankly, oftentimes better than mine. And it's fun to brainstorm. I again, thank you for your time. And if anyone out there is looking to get a hold of Lexi and they're interested in more of this, you can find her on LinkedIn. She's out there, Lexi Miller. So thanks for listening or watching or however you choose to digest your podcasts. We thank you very much. And thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thanks for having me back.